Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. On the last segment, I showed you the different kinds of recorders that you can get, and I have all of them with the exception of the huge straight basses, which are so big and so heavy that most people who play them standing up with a special bocal beside the mouthpiece because they can't be tall enough to blow in from the top like you would for most of the other recorders, for all of the other recorders. I want to do a quick review of that, and then I want to show you a sassoon flute and a penny whistle. A penny whistles you have probably seen. I mean, you can buy them for a few dollars in music stores, and you can get them in different sizes and different keys, but you've probably never seen one that's as big as the one that I'm going to show you. So just as a review of the different kinds of recorders that are used, and I've wanted to have an opportunity to bring all of the different sizes in. They're not easy to carry, some of them, but it's worth seeing them all at the same time if you can. So I started off and I talked to you about the little sopranino. This is the smallest one that you could get professionally, and it's in the key of F, and it plays perfectly well, but it's very high pitched. And then I showed you the descant or the soprano, which is what I usually call it, and that's the one that most people play, and it's about a foot long, 12.5 inches or so, and it plays very well, and you can play all kinds of music with it, and the finger stretches are quite comfortable. Most people don't have problems with it unless you have a lot of arthritis, and it's very easily playable, and you can play some terrific music. It's not just a toy. Most people consider the recorder to be a toy, and I can tell you for sure it is not a toy. It's a professional instrument, just like any other instrument is a professional instrument. And then I showed you the altos, which is bigger, and they play beautiful music. They have a wonderful tone, and they are a lot of people's favorite instruments, and they were used in history as a main instrument of orchestras. And so famous composers such as Bach and Handel, they wrote for the alto, and they took a primary part of a lot of the orchestral concerts of that day. And then I went on to go into the tenor, which is about 36 inches long. Very beautiful tone. It sounds like it has a human voice. And I want to mention here about voicing of instruments. Some wooden instruments that you can see in the recorder family, they can be revoiced. If you have an old instrument that's wood, but it's in good shape, but the voice doesn't seem to be quite right, or it seems to be kind of an older voice that doesn't have the mellowness that it has, a lot of times you can get those wooden instruments revoiced. I suppose I've never seen it done, but I suppose they go in the instrument and kind of file it down in the inside. They can be revoiced. The plastic ones, they don't revoice them. But these instruments last for long periods of time. If you take care of them, they will be playing very well after years after you buy them. So this is the alto, and it's a very beautiful instrument, almost has a human voice. I'm sorry, this is the tenor, and this here is the bass, and this is the largest one that I have. I play this sitting down with a larger instrument. You see, left hand still goes on top, right hand still goes on the bottom, just like any other wooden instrument. And then there is a place in the back that you can connect a strap. It's there, you know, to put your thumb, so you have a place to rest your thumb and get your hand in position to play it. But also, and I didn't bring it with me, is a strap that you can get, and it goes around your neck. Now, saxophones have a strap, so it's not unusual to have an instrument that is this large or this heavy with a strap. You can get a strap to go with this. And of course, if your hands are weak, or if you have arthritis, or if you have difficulty with your hands, it's going to be hard to play it. And instruments do get dropped sometimes, which is the reason for the strap. But it is easier to play this bass than it is to play the tenor, where you have a tremendous stretch of the fingers and no strap and only one or two keys. And you can see, if I put my first finger, my index finger, on the top, and then the second finger doesn't come down here until, and then the third finger is way down here. Now I've moved this hand out of position so you can see what this note is like. I would normally, if I was playing this, and I don't play it for solo work anymore because my hands can't do it anymore, but this fourth finger could be stretched to go down here. I have to be careful. I mean, these are real hard finger stretches, and a lot of people have to give up playing these notes, these instruments, as beautiful as they are, because of the finger stretches. So this is the tenor, just to show you. It's easy to play the bass than it is the tenor, because there are keys on the bass. So let me just review. You've got a key. My tone hole in back is right here where my thumb is. Once I reach that, then automatically my hands are going to go in the right position, and they're going to have this, if this is in the key of C, B, A, G. But this is on a key, and this key opens up so that this closes, so that this tone hole down here will be closed. I don't know how much you can see of this because it's a darker colored instrument, but when you press this, this key goes down. No way could you stretch your finger to go down here. You just couldn't do it. No one would be able to do it. So if they put a key in here, that key, when you press it down, has a little pad on it, and it closes this key, and that's the one that you want closed, the one that you can't reach. You know, so you do have the advantage of having keys. You have a couple here, and you have this one up here, and there's another key right here, so that you can cover a whole scale, even though there's no way your fingers would be able to stretch as much. You don't have keys like this in the smaller instruments. So so that pretty much covers the recorders that I have. And remember, there is a recorder, the straight bass, the great bass, that's even larger than that. Now, I have shown you before Sassoon instruments. These are black. I have several of them. You can get them in different keys. They're kind of like a penny whistle, but they don't have a tone hole in the back, and they play very well. You can play all kinds of music with them. And this is the average size of the Sassoon. This one is in the key of C. Now, you can get them that are larger, B flat and A, but this is the average size of a Sassoon. I've used this a lot. I like this instrument, and I've used it a lot, but they do come in different sizes. The largest Sassoon that you will ever see is this one. If you take a look at that, it's white. It has the head joint right here. And I've never tried to separate this because, but some Sassoons, you are able to take off that head joint for the purpose of tuning it. So you can make it a little bit longer, or you can make it a little bit shorter. But I've never pulled this off. I'm not going to try it here. But the finger stretches are really horrendous. Here's one finger, here's another finger. My third finger can't really go over here. You know, I can take my hand out of position and show you where that hole is, but there's no way that I can get that finger to fully cover without endangering my hand. And I did endanger my hand. I was practicing, this is kind of a story I told Rick in between shows. I was practicing on an alto recorder. In other words, I was practicing on one the size of this, and I was stretching my fingers. I had to really stretch my fingers because the distance, if you look at the holes here, and I'll put this down for a minute and then come back to it. If you look at the holes here, there's quite a distance between them. So if I have my finger here and my finger here, I used to be able to, and I can now to a certain degree, cover this hole, but then you get down to the other holes and the C. I mean, there's quite a bit of finger stretching. Well, I had been practicing for a solo, and I'd been using an instrument. It was an alto, so it would have been one of mine. I've got 4 of them. And all of a sudden I heard this crack. It was a loud crack and a piercing pain on my right hand. And what had happened, because of the finger stretches and the way I was holding the instrument, because I had to hold it in position for a fair amount of time to get the note that I needed to get, it pulled this finger right out of the socket, this 4th finger. I knew what had happened. As soon as I felt it, and as soon as I heard it, I knew what I had done. And the pain was really quite bad. But instead of going to a doctor, which I should have done, I guess, I put my other hand on top of it and held it. And the warmth of my other hand, it gradually eased that finger back into the joint. I never saw a doctor with it, but I can tell you that I don't do much finger stretching with it because it isn't that stable. I don't have problems using my hands at all. I can do anything with my hands that a person can do. But if I'm to stretch, to play these instruments, to have large finger stretches, I would be in danger of taking that finger and pulling it out of the socket again. And believe me, that is a pain that you do not want to experience. One thing, and I've gone over this before, and I may do a special class on it, when you start playing instruments, you use the same muscles over and over again. And if you're playing piano, you know, it's this business. And it shouldn't be this business. I know a lot of people play with their wrists up, but that's the wrong way to play a piano. The wrist should be down. It should be natural. But what can you do with your wrist and your hands after years of playing the same muscles over and over again? You can get injuries. They're overuse injuries. If you're playing a flute, and the one reason I don't play the flute so much is that it does quite a number on your shoulders and your arms. And so a lot of people end up by having to pull back on that instrument because you can only, after years of doing the same thing, it uses the muscles too much and you can get injured from it. Well, I pull that finger right out of the socket. And so I am somewhat limited in the amount of finger stretching that I can do because it would possibly slip out of the socket again. I don't know what, even if I'd gone to the doctor, what they could have done. They would make sure that the bone was back in place again. They probably would have bandaged it and said, don't use it for a while, and that would have been it. And of course, I was wise enough not to overuse it. But you do get into the situation with the finger stretches. Now, back to the sassoon. It's a lot bigger than the normal size sassoon, a lot bigger, but it plays beautifully. Now, the only thing is, with the hand situation that most people have, they're not going to be able to really stretch their hands out unless they're young and they're very flexible and they've had practice, and so they're used to it. You will notice this tone hole here. This tone hole here is bigger than the others to accommodate the fingers. This finger. What you have to remember is that some of the holes on these instruments are going to be different sizes, but the reason they're different sizes is to accommodate the size of your finger. The finger pad of your middle finger is going to be bigger than of some of the other fingers, and so therefore the instruments are made to accommodate that. That fits in there very well. But look at the finger stretches. Here and here, I don't have a problem. I cannot stretch this finger to meet this hole. It's just too much. And so when I first bought this one, somebody said to me, with a person that I got it from the company, they said, Pat, if you can't play it, if it's just too much, you can send it back. But it's so beautiful, and I use it a lot as a teaching tool, and I would never send it back. Once an instrument is in my possession, it's mine, it's under my care, and it stays, whether I can play it all or not. But you can see how big your hands would have to be to handle that. So that is the largest sasuto that I have ever seen. It plays really well, though. Then I've also showed you before a penny whistle. Now, penny whistles, I use these a lot. They come in different keys. They don't have a tone hole in the back. They play a lot of Irish music. Sometimes I used to just call them Irish flutes, but they can play a lot. And they get to be a little squealy, but they're different sizes, and this one happens to be in the key of D, which is a pretty common key to get it in, and it's cylindrical. It doesn't come to a point, and of course it has this plastic mouthpiece with the labium in front, mouthpiece to blow into, and you don't see a block in it, but this acts as a block. The way that it's designed, it acts like a block. Well, this is a pretty common instrument. They're a lot of fun to play. It doesn't take a lot of wind to play them, but you probably have never seen a penny whistle this size. This is my low D penny whistle. Now, this low D is the same in the sense it's in the same key as this. They're both considered to be low D instruments. In other words, they're in the key of D, and you can get a really low D out of them. This is a low D sasuto. This is a low D penny whistle. And it has a beautiful tone. And I'd like to be able to play it more, but here again, it's the issue of the finger stretches. It has a good quality of tone, but these tone holes are so far apart. And they also start way down on the instruments. There's no tone hole in the back. Penny whistles and sasutos do not have a thumb hole in the back. And so you don't, you can play all the notes without it, of course. But this starts way down. You see the labium and the mouthpiece. See how short that mouthpiece is. And the labium is right below it. That means it's blocked right here, but it plays beautifully. That's just the design of the instrument. But when you get down here, you've got finger stretches, and I've got my hands on it. But to play a solo, I'd have to be able to be flexible enough to move my hands around. And you can see that it is actually a lot of space between your fingers. So the finger stretches are very intense. And yet at the same time, it's got a really gorgeous tone to it. This is a penny whistle, believe it or not. So I kind of looked out in getting all of those. I just want you to see that there is a lot of variation in the size of the instruments from this little sopranino, just comparing this little sopranino to this, I'll bring it down, to this bass. And this isn't the biggest bass. This is probably one of the smaller basses. The folded bass is probably smaller than a lot of the other straight basses, but they're certainly big enough. They're certainly big enough for most people. I know one of my friends who has one of these basses loves it so much that she takes it everywhere with her. Everywhere she goes, she's got the bass. And this is the little sopranino right beside it. And so you can see it's hardly above the foot joint, just a little bit above the foot joint. So even within instruments, there can be a big range of differences in size and tone. Remember, the larger the instrument, the lower the pitch is going to be. And also, I think the lower pitch instruments are really beautiful instruments to play. And also, the simple instruments are interesting because they can play so much. I walked into a store once, it was a grocery store, and somebody ran up to me and said, "It's really you." Well, I says, "Okay, it's really me." What does that mean? And she says, "I watch you all the time." And she was a part of an Indian tribe, and they all watch. All of them watch because what I play on television are the simpler instruments, but you can play beautiful music on them. I do have some Native American flutes that are gorgeous. They're gorgeous in their tone, and I'll bring them in at some point. But you see the straight instruments with the tone holes, you use your hands, you use your breath. It's very important to be able to have a good air supply. It's very important to be able to breathe correctly. It's not unusual to have breathing exercises as you're learning how to play instruments because you can play them better if you have more breath. And of course, the large ones require more air. I have a tiny saxophone that's this big. It's a soprano saxophone. It's a full saxophone. It's not a toy. It's a regular saxophone. It is hard to play because it requires so much air. Some of the larger instruments and the smaller instruments, some of the smallest ones are harder to play than some of the larger ones. But at the same time, they all require a good air supply, and you need to be able to give them that. And then you get the best tone. The more you build up your oxygen supply, the more you use your diaphragm and breathe correctly, the better tone you're going to get. You're going to be able to hold your notes longer. And so when I see students, and I know it's a royal pain for them, they hate to do it, and I don't blame them, nobody likes to, it's the holding tone. You take an instrument, you choose a note, doesn't matter what note it is, and you blow into it, and you just hold it steady for as long as you can. Now, I can hold it a lot longer than that, but I'm not going to because it would be just boring to see it happen. But you can go up and down the scale and hold it as long as you can. And as you get stronger and develop a better air supply and more support of the oxygen, you can hold it for a long, long time. That increases the ability that you have of playing long passages, and some of them in which you have to hold notes. And also, it actually helps you to develop your tone. You can have better tone because you're not just kind of blowing in. You're holding it. You're learning how to control the tone. The tone gets better. Your strength gets better. And it would be the same for any brass instrument, for a trumpet or French horn, to do the same thing. It wouldn't be an issue at all if you're going to be strumming a guitar or using a stringed instrument where you're not using your breath at all. But at any rate, that's the one way that you can have. Go up and down the scale, take one note at a time, blow as hard as you can, but keep it steady. Don't just blow in and then let the note fade. Blow in a reasonable amount of air and keep the tone steady for as long as you can, going up and down the scale. That will help you to improve your tone, and it will help you with your breath supply so you can play more notes and longer passages. Well, I guess I'm getting close to being out of time here, so I'm going to close it here for now, and I will be giving you hints as you're playing instruments as to how you're going to be sounding better, how you're going to phrase things better, and it will just improve the quality of the music that you produce. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time.